Hello, and welcome to Lyla's Lullabies, where we spend time exploring with Lyla, a traveler who wanders the world at her own pace while sharing her most enriching and restorative moments with you. In tonight's story, we'll follow Lyla as she explores the Golden Circle, a collection of amazing sights near Iceland's capital city. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to remember. Just settle in, get comfortable, and let yourself go. We're so glad you're here. Whenever you're ready, let's begin. The SUV pulled up to Lyla's hotel at 8 in the morning, though the sky suggested it could have been any hour. The June sun in Iceland created a timeless quality, already well above the horizon even at this early hour, the light clear and golden, promising to last well into what would normally be called night. The driver, a woman named Sig-roon with silver-streaked hair and a warm smile, greeted Lyla as she climbed into the vehicle. "Good morning. Ready to see the Golden Circle?" "Very ready," Lyla said, settling into the comfortable seat. There were 3 other passengers already in the SUV, a couple from Germany who introduced themselves as Klaus and Petra, and a solo traveler from Australia named Ben. Everyone exchanged friendly hellos, that easy camaraderie that forms among small groups about to share an experience. Sig-roon pulled away from the hotel and began driving out of Reykjavik, heading east. "We'll visit 3 main sites today," she explained, her English accented but clear. Thing-vet-lir National Park first, then the Geysir geothermal area, and finally Gool-foss waterfall. The whole circuit is about 300 kilometers, so we'll have plenty of time at each place. In June, we have light all day and all night, so no need to rush. The landscape changed quickly as they left the city behind. Reykjavik gave way to suburbs, then to open land. Fields covered in green moss, volcanic rock visible beneath it, the terrain rolling and textured. The road was smooth and well maintained, cutting through this ancient landscape. Lyla watched out the window, fascinated by the geology. Everything here was volcanic in origin, the island itself, born from the mid-Atlantic ridge, where tectonic plates met and lava pushed through. The rocks were dark, basalt and pumice, but covered in that vivid green moss that softened everything, made the harsh landscape somehow gentle. "The moss is very old," Sig-roon said, noticing Lyla's attention. "It grows very slowly here, maybe just a few millimeters a year. Some of what you're seeing could be hundreds of years old. We're very protective of it. If you step on it, it can take decades to recover." Mountains appeared in the distance, their peaks still holding snow despite the summer season. Clouds moved across the sky, creating patterns of light and shadow that swept across the land, constantly changing the view. One moment, everything would be brilliant and clear, the next shadowed and mysterious, then brilliant again. "Iceland's weather is famous for changing quickly," Sig-roon said. "We have a saying, 'If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes,'" she laughed. "Today looks good, though, clear enough to see everything properly." They passed horses grazing in fields, the small, sturdy Icelandic breed with their thick manes and compact bodies. They're descended from horses brought by the Vikings, Klaus said, clearly having done his research. No other horses are allowed to be imported to Iceland to keep the bloodline pure. The horses looked up as the SUV passed, then returned to grazing, unbothered by the vehicle. There was something timeless about the scene. Horses in a field, mountains beyond, the endless sky above. After about 45 minutes, Sig-roon turned off the main road, and soon they were entering Thing-vet-lir National Park. "This is a very special place," she said. "It's where the North American and Eurasian tectonic plates meet. You can actually see where they're pulling apart, creating the Rift Valley. And it's also where Iceland's parliament was founded in 930 AD, one of the oldest parliaments in the world." She parked in a lot overlooking the valley, and everyone climbed out. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of water and earth. The view was dramatic. A wide valley spread before them, a river winding through it, and on either side, steep cliffs of dark rock, the edges of the tectonic plates. "We'll walk down into the valley," Sig-roon said. "Take your time, look at everything. The rock formations are fascinating." They descended a path that wound between the cliffs, and Lyla could see the fractured nature of the rock, the way it had been pulled and stressed by geological forces. Fissures ran through it, some narrow enough to step across, others wide enough to be small canyons. Water collected in some of them, creating pools so clear you could see every detail of the rock beneath. The scale was impressive. The cliffs rose on both sides, creating the sense of walking through a natural cathedral. The rock was dark and textured, layers visible, telling the story of successive lava flows, each one adding to the structure. "This is Al-Mahnagya," Sig-roon explained. "The rift. The plates are moving apart about 2 centimeters per year. It doesn't sound like much, but over geological time, it's created all of this." They walked along the valley floor, the path well maintained but natural, winding around rocks and through meadows where wildflowers were beginning to bloom. The flowers were small and hardy, adapted to the short growing season: purple thyme, white Arctic river beauty, yellow buttercups. A river flowed through the valley, clear and cold, fed by glacial melt. Sig-roon led them to a spot where they could see a waterfall, Urksrowr-foss, tumbling over a rock face into a pool below. The water was so clear it seemed almost unreal, every rock on the bottom visible, the sunlight creating patterns on the surface. "You can drink the water anywhere in Iceland," Sig-roon said. "It's some of the purest in the world, straight from glaciers and filtered through volcanic rock." They stood watching the waterfall for a while, the sound of falling water soothing and constant. Other visitors were there too, but the space was large enough that it never felt crowded. Everyone moved at their own pace, stopping where something caught their interest, the atmosphere respectful and quiet. Ben, the Australian traveler, stood near Lyla at the water's edge. "It's remarkable, isn't it?" he said. "I've traveled quite a bit, but Iceland is something else. It feels ancient and young at the same time." Lyla agreed. There was something primal about being here, standing in this rift valley where the Earth itself was actively being created and destroyed, where you could see the fundamental forces that shaped the planet. After exploring Thing-vet-lir for about an hour, they returned to the SUV and continued the journey. The landscape rolled past, ever-changing. Lava fields covered in moss, farmland with scattered houses, more horses and sheep grazing, mountains always in the distance. Next stop is Geysir, Sig-roon announced. The geothermal area. It's where the word geyser comes from the Icelandic verb geysir, meaning to gush. The drive took them through more varied terrain. They passed a lake, its surface mirror calm, reflecting the sky and mountains perfectly. They climbed into higher elevations where the vegetation thinned, the landscape becoming more stark, more obviously volcanic. Steam appeared in the distance, plumes rising from the ground, and Lyla knew they were approaching the geothermal area. As they got closer, the landscape became more active, more alive in a geological sense. Steam vented from fissures. Mineral deposits colored the ground in yellows and oranges and whites. The smell of sulfur became noticeable, not overwhelming but present, a reminder of the volcanic forces beneath. Sig-roon parked and they walked into the geothermal area, following boardwalks built to protect the fragile ground and keep visitors safe from the scalding water and steam. The main attraction was Strokkur, a geyser that erupted regularly every 5 to 10 minutes, sending a column of water high into the air. A crowd had gathered around it, everyone waiting for the next eruption. The geyser's pool bubbled gently, steam rising, the water a milky blue from minerals. Then, suddenly, the surface would bulge upward, forming a dome, and with a roar and a rush, the water would shoot up 30 meters or more into the air, catching the sunlight, creating rainbows in the spray. Everyone gasped and applauded, cameras clicking, the moment both brief and spectacular. Then the water would fall back, the pool would settle, and the waiting would begin again for the next eruption. Lyla watched it erupt 3 times, fascinated by the power and the regularity, this intersection of water and heat, creating something dramatic and beautiful. Between eruptions, she walked around the area, looking at other hot springs and mud pots, the ground painted with mineral deposits, everything steaming and bubbling and alive. The water comes from deep underground, Sig-roon explained. It's heated by magma, and when the pressure builds enough, it erupts. The whole area is like this, geothermally active. We use it for heating and electricity in Iceland. It's one of our greatest natural resources. Klaus and Petra were taking photographs, trying to time their shots to catch the eruption at its peak. Ben was talking with another traveler, comparing notes about Iceland and other places they'd visited. The atmosphere was happy and excited, everyone delighted by the natural spectacle. After spending time at the geothermal area, they returned to the SUV for the final leg of the Golden Circle, Gool-foss, the Golden Waterfall. "It's my favorite," Sig-roon said as they drove. "Wait until you see it. It's powerful." The landscape continued to reveal itself, more lava fields, more moss-covered rocks, a river valley with steep sides. Then they arrived at Gool-foss, parking in a lot where the sound of falling water was already audible, a deep, continuous roar that spoke of enormous volume and force. They walked along a path toward the waterfall, the sound growing louder with each step. Then they reached a viewpoint, and there it was, Gool-foss in all its power and glory. The waterfall was massive, the Vita River plunging in 2 stages into a narrow canyon, creating enormous amounts of spray that caught the sunlight and created rainbows. The volume of water was staggering, the force evident in the way it crashed and churned, the sound overwhelming, the spray reaching far enough that Lyla could feel the moisture on her face. "The name means Golden Falls," Sig-roon explained, raising her voice to be heard over the roar. "Sometimes, when the sun hits it right, the water looks golden, and in winter it partially freezes, creating ice sculptures. But this is the most powerful time, when the glacial melt is at its peak." They walked to different viewpoints, each one offering a different perspective on the waterfall. From above, they could see how the river narrowed and accelerated before plunging. From the side, they could appreciate the 2-tiered nature of the falls. From below, they felt the full power, the spray creating a perpetual mist, the sound absolute. Lyla stood at the lower viewpoint for a long time, mesmerized by the water's power. There was something humbling about it, this reminder of nature's force, the way water could carve through rock over millennia, creating this spectacular canyon and falls. The river had been doing this for thousands of years and would continue for thousands more, indifferent to human presence. The rainbows were constant in the spray, arcing and shifting, sometimes double rainbows, the colors vivid against the white water and dark rock. Other visitors stood nearby, everyone silent or speaking in hushed tones, the waterfall commanding respect and awe. After exploring all the viewpoints, Sig-roon gathered the group. "We'll stop for lunch on the way back," she said. "There's a nice spot I know, with good food and a view." They drove for about 20 minutes, the landscape gradually becoming less dramatic, more pastoral. Sig-roon pulled into a small farm that had been converted into a restaurant, its buildings traditional turf-roofed structures that looked like they grew from the earth itself. Inside, the restaurant was cozy and welcoming, with wooden tables and local art on the walls. They ordered from a menu featuring Icelandic specialties, lamb soup, smoked trout, rye bread with butter, skyr for dessert. Lyla chose the lamb soup, which came in a large bowl, steaming and fragrant. The lamb was tender, the broth rich with vegetables and herbs, the flavor deep and satisfying. She ate with the traditional rye bread, dense and slightly sweet, perfect for soaking up the soup. The group chatted as they ate, sharing impressions of the day, talking about their travels and their lives back home. Klaus and Petra were retired teachers, traveling for 3 months through Scandinavia. Ben was taking a gap year before starting graduate school, spending it seeing as much of the world as possible. Sig-roon shared stories about growing up in Iceland, about the changes she'd seen, about how tourism had transformed the economy but also created challenges. We love sharing our country, she said, but we also want to protect it. It's a balance. The landscapes are fragile, the ecosystem's unique. We try to educate visitors, to help them understand how to experience Iceland responsibly. After lunch, they stepped outside and the sky had transformed. Clouds had moved in, creating dramatic lighting, shafts of sun breaking through in places, creating spotlights on the landscape. The mountains in the distance appeared and disappeared as clouds moved across them. "This is very Icelandic," Sig-roon said, gesturing at the sky. "The light is always changing. In summer, with the midnight sun, it creates these endless variations. You never see the same scene twice." They drove back toward Reykjavik, taking a slightly different route that offered new views. They passed more farms, more horses, a small church with a red roof sitting alone in a field, picturesque against the dramatic sky. Lyla watched the landscape scroll past, feeling deeply satisfied with the day. She'd seen geological wonders, experienced the power of water and earth, witnessed the ways Iceland's volcanic nature shaped everything from the terrain to the culture. The long daylight had given the day a dreamlike quality, time feeling elastic, the light never fading enough to mark clear transitions between morning, afternoon, and evening. As they approached Reykjavik, Sig-roon pointed out landmarks, told stories about different neighborhoods, recommended places to eat and visit. "If you have time, go to the Perlan Museum," she suggested. "It has excellent exhibits about Iceland's nature and history. And walk around the pond in the city center. It's peaceful, good for reflection." She dropped Ben off first at his hostel, then Klaus and Petra at their hotel, and finally pulled up to Lila's hotel. "Thank you for coming," she said warmly. "I hope you enjoyed the Golden Circle." "It was wonderful," Lyla said. "Thank you for sharing your country with us." "Come back in winter sometime," Sig-roon said. "It's completely different, dark and cold, but the northern lights, there's nothing like them." Lyla thanked her again and went into the hotel, feeling pleasantly tired from the day of travel and exploration, but she wasn't ready to go to her room yet. The evening, though it looked like afternoon, the sun still high, was too beautiful to waste. She walked back out and made her way to Tyrnin, the pond in the city center that Sig-roon had mentioned. It was just a short walk from her hotel, through streets that were busy with evening activity, people out enjoying the endless daylight, cafes and restaurants with outdoor seating full of customers. The pond was lovely, surrounded by a walking path, with swans and ducks gliding across its surface. The Parliament building was on one side, other historic buildings on others, and across the water, the view of the city and the mountains beyond. Lyla walked slowly around the pond, joining other walkers and joggers, everyone moving at their own pace, enjoying the light and the gentle evening. Children fed the ducks, tossing bread and laughing when the birds crowded around. A man played saxophone near one of the bridges, his music floating across the water, melodic and peaceful. She found a bench and sat, watching the swans. They moved with such grace, their movements economical and elegant. One came close to shore, and she could see the details, the pure white feathers, the orange beak, the black mask around its eyes. The light was beginning its slow transition toward what passed for night in Icelandic summer. The sun was lower now. It was approaching 10 in the evening, but still well above the horizon, creating that golden glow that photographers called magic hour. The buildings around the pond glowed. The water reflected the warm light. Everything seemed touched by gold. Lyla sat for a long time, content to simply be present. She thought about the day, about the tectonic rift at Thing-vet-lir, where the earth was literally pulling itself apart and creating something new, about Strokkur erupting with such regularity and power, that intersection of water and heat and pressure creating spectacle, about Gool-foss and its overwhelming force, the way water shaped landscape over time. All of it spoke to Iceland's essential nature, a land still being formed, still active, still volcanic and geothermal, still young in geological terms, and the people who lived here had adapted to it, had learned to work with these forces rather than against them, had built a society that used geothermal energy and respected the fragile landscapes and found beauty in the extremes of light and dark. The sun continued its arc toward the horizon, but so slowly that the change was barely perceptible. This was what the midnight sun meant. Not that the sun never set, but that it barely dipped below the horizon before rising again, creating perpetual twilight at night, a glow that never quite disappeared. People were still out, walking and cycling, sitting at cafes, enjoying the evening that felt like afternoon. There was no sense of the day ending, no urgency to get home before darkness fell, because darkness wouldn't really fall. Just a softening of the light, a gentling of the day into a twilight night that would last only a few hours before brightening again. Lyla stood eventually and walked slowly back to her hotel, taking a meandering route, exploring streets she hadn't seen yet. She passed a small park where a group was having a picnic, their laughter carrying on the evening air. She passed a gallery with its lights on, late hours accommodating the extended day, visitors inside viewing art. At a small cafe still open, she stopped and ordered a cup of herbal tea to go, something with chamomile and local herbs. The barista prepared it carefully, recommending she add honey from a local beekeeper. "It's from bees that pollinate the wildflowers you saw today," she said. "You can taste the landscape in it." Lyla walked with her tea, sipping it slowly, the warmth welcome as the evening air cooled. The honey was distinct, with floral notes and something earthy, a complexity that did indeed suggest wildflowers and volcanic soil and the unique Icelandic environment. Back at her hotel, she went up to her room and opened the curtains wide, wanting to watch the light continue its slow evolution. She pulled a chair to the window and sat with her tea, looking out at Reykjavik in the endless June evening. The city glowed softly in the golden light. She could see Hallgrím's kirkja in the distance, its distinctive tower catching the sun. She could see the harbor beyond, boats at rest, the water calm, and beyond that, mountains, their peaks still holding snow, painted in shades of gold and pink and purple as the sun moved toward its brief dip below the horizon. She thought about how different this was from her November visit, that darkness and cold, those abbreviated days. Both were Iceland, both were beautiful, but they showed completely different faces of the country. The winter darkness created coziness and intimacy, a turning inward. The summer light created this openness, this sense of infinite possibility, days that never ended, energy that never needed to wind down because night never really came. The light outside continued to soften, becoming more golden, more diffused. The quality was extraordinary, unlike anything she experienced at home, this endless twilight that made everything seem timeless, suspended, magical. She could see people still out in the streets below, walking and talking, in no hurry to be anywhere. A cyclist passed. A couple stopped to look in a shop window. Life continued, unbound by the usual constraints of daylight and darkness. Lyla remained at the window, watching the light, feeling peaceful and content. The day had been full of wonders, geological marvels and natural power, dramatic landscapes and subtle beauties, the companionship of fellow travelers, and the expertise of a knowledgeable guide. But more than that, she'd experienced something of Iceland's essential character, that combination of harsh and gentle, powerful and delicate, ancient and new. The tectonic forces that literally tore the island apart also created its dramatic beauty. The volcanic activity that could be destructive also provided heat and energy. The extreme light cycles that could be disorienting also created these magical qualities, winter darkness and summer luminescence, both beautiful in their way. The sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in deeper oranges and pinks. But it wouldn't go far below, she knew. In an hour or two, it would begin rising again, the twilight never deepening into true darkness, the cycle continuing. Lyla watched the colors intensify and then begin to soften as the sun slipped just barely below the horizon line. The sky remained light, that perpetual glow that characterized Icelandic summer nights, bright enough to read by, to walk safely, to continue life without interruption. She thought about the midnight sun, about how it affected people who lived with it, the extra energy it provided, the way it enabled work and play to extend into what would normally be night, but also the challenge of it, the way your body craved darkness for sleep, the need for blackout curtains, the adjustment required. Everything in Iceland required adjustment, she thought. Adjustment to the geology, to the weather, to the light cycles, to the isolation of being an island in the North Atlantic. But the people who lived here had made those adjustments for over 1,000 years, had not just survived, but created a society known for creativity and innovation, for literature and music, for adaptation and resilience. The evening, or night, though it didn't look like night, continued its gentle progression. The light outside her window remained, that golden glow that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, diffused by the atmosphere, reflected by the clouds, creating a luminescence that had no single source. Lyla remained at the window, watching the light, feeling the day settle into memory, while the evening offered its own quiet gifts. The land of fire and ice had revealed some of its secrets, had shared its power and beauty, had welcomed her into its strange and wonderful rhythms, its extremes and contradictions, all of it somehow making perfect sense when you were here, in this otherworldly place.